it's Glenn from glenscarcollection.com, and in this video we're going to compare two really rare M cars. And guess what? I own both of them, a 2011 BMW 1M and my 2001 Z3M Coupe with a rare S54 engine. If you need to read your text messages, or you need backup cameras, you need automatic or dual clutch transmissions, this video is not for you. Go skip to a modern car like a BMW M2, the M2 competition. But these cars are really for hardcore enthusiast drivers. So first up is the BMW 1M. I've owned this car for about 4 years. Here in the United States, they were only made in 2011, model year 2011. They came in 3 colors: Valencia orange, sapphire black, and alpine white. Believe it or not, they only made 740 cars. 309 were Valencia orange, like this. So the orange is actually the most popular color. Base price was $46,000. This fully loaded was $54,000, exactly the same as my 2016 M2 was fully loaded. Coincidence? I think not. Now this car weighs about just over 3,300 pounds. Like I said earlier, they only come with manual transmission, so this is a true driver's car. Rear drive, none of that all-wheel drive crap, and it is just a blast to drive. One of my favorite cars I've ever driven. They were instant classics when they came out. The local dealer to me was selling them. I don't know what they got, but they were asking $30,000 over sticker for any 1M they came. And remember, the fully loaded price was $54,000, so they were asking $84,000. I am the second owner of this car, and I bought it from a gentleman who was lucky to get a New Jersey BMW dealer to sell him this car at sticker price. Now, let's compare this. We're going to compare this to the Z3M. Both of these cars have enhancements, so this car sounds better than stock. They're very quiet from the factory. This car, I have a mid-pipe and a Borla Attack muffler catback exhaust. I have the stock full exhaust for resale value, but I can tell you that you know, these cars are very quiet from the factory. I'm averaging 19.2 miles per gallon, which in comparison, my E90 V8 M3, I averaged about 17.5. So with this turbocharged 3-liter straight 6 twin turbocharged N54 engine, you can get pretty decent gas mileage, and I drive this car spiritedly. In the back seat is kind of a tight fit. Remember, the Z3M Coupe is only a 2-seater, so this car you can fit people in the back. I would say small children or small adults. I'm 6 feet tall and I can't sit in the back seat behind myself, but I can in the M2. Now, what makes this car so great, and the Z3M also, is it's got hydraulic steering. When I drive this back-to-back with my M2, or even an M2 competition, the steering is not as good as this car. That's the first thing that's apparent. Now, this car is a very nervous car, but in a good way. So, for example, if you didn't have that much, say, track experience, or you're not that great of a driver, you took this car in the M2, as you can see in my other videos, and you would definitely be faster in the M2. It's a more electronic car. The stability control will save you. This car is a very twitchy car. Only the best drivers can get good lap times out of it. But the great news is, if you're a good driver, you can get a great lap time out of it. I haven't tracked my particular car, but I've driven others on the track, and it can be a phenomenal track or autocross car with the proper tires. Now the ride is pretty smooth. I mean, it's, you know, it's sports car stiffness. So if you're driving a 3 or a 5 Series, here comes a nice BMW i8. It's not going to drive like that. But and we're on a really bumpy road here, so it's magnified with my camera mounts. But it is a very fun car to drive, and the ride is not bad at all. Here we got an air-cooled 911 964. It's going to rain soon, so I think everybody has their cars out. All right, so let's talk about values. I bought this car 4 years ago with 10,000 miles for $51,000. That was probably the low point as far as values go. Even when a car is really hot, people are paying over sticker when it's new. At some point it settles down and depreciates, and then it goes back up. This car, right after I bought it, went back up. I thought this would be a great buy because I thought This is one of the best driving and rarest M cars ever made. And I think the way you buy these cars is a fully loaded car. If you look at Ford GTs or any of the classic muscle cars, the fully optioned cars always bring the most money. And then second to that would be a no options car. So again, base price was 46, fully loaded was 54,000 with all the options, which give you, heated seats, navigation, Harman Kardon, to name a few. So the way you buy this, I think, as an investment or for a car to drive for free, because it'll go up in value every year, is get a fully loaded car, maybe no options car. Valencia Orange has a much better resale value than black and white, so I would get a Valencia Orange as well. Great news is every car you look at will be a stick shift, be a manual. I bought this car with 10,000 miles 4 years ago, and I paid 51,000. I was lucky I got it somebody who was buying a house and needed to sell it immediately for a down payment. So to get good deals on cars, bumpy road here, you have to be able to act quickly. If you have to get your finances in order and apply for a loan, you will miss the car. Now this car, I've put about 6,500 miles on it in 4 years. I know I have so many other cars, and on the weekends I'm driving your cars filming and getting press cars, so I don't have that much time to drive my own cars. So I put 6,500 miles on it in 4 years, and now I could probably sell this car for about 65,000. We're shooting this in late 2018, and of course the car is going to keep climbing up in value. It's gone up about $14,000 in the 4 years I've had it. So I think realistically this car will go up $3,000 to $5,000 per year. So you can buy one now even at $65,000, probably drive it for a couple of years, sell it for $75,000 or $80,000. Always buy a highly maintained car, and that's why I don't have issues with my car. Always start with a low mileage car. If you want to get into this car, a car with a really 50,000 miles is probably worth about 55 at the time of this filming. We have one gentleman I know of that drives this car every day because it could easily be a daily driver, and he has about 100,000 miles on his car, and that car's probably still worth 45. So I would think like 100,000 mile cars are worth high 40s, 50,000 miles worth 55. Low mileage cars like this are probably worth 65. I'm sure if you had a 5,000 mile example, it's probably worth 75. Let's make a turn here and go down another road. This car is a modern enough car that you can certainly commute with it every day. Like I mentioned, we know somebody who does that, has over 100,000 miles on his car. It's got all the modern conveniences, doesn't have a backup camera, but you have everything you can need here. A good stereo, radio. It's got the brake assist for the clutch, so you won't roll down any hills. So it's pretty much a foolproof car, easy to drive every day, as long as, again, you don't need a backup camera. Now, the Z3M Coupe is not like that at all, and it's 10 years older, and they're both great buys. I don't buy a car unless I'm goo-goo gaga over it, like I'm totally in love. It's a 10 to me, so I feel that way for both of these cars. So most likely, you're gonna have a choice to buy one or the other, and that's really what this video is for, so you can make an educated decision what's right for you. Now, this car has 335 horsepower, 370 horsepower with overboost. And this car feels very fast. It feels faster than the M Coupe, probably because of the turbocharged motor. And it is quicker, honestly. What I did is I took my old car magazines. I used Car and Driver for a reference, so we'd have the same the same magazine doing both tests. And they got 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 with this car, and 4.8 seconds with the BMW M Coupe. Now, this car is roughly 3,300 pounds. The M Coupe is roughly 3,100 pounds. So this is 200 pounds heavier. You will notice that it's heavier when you drive the cars back to back. Most likely, there'll never be a situation where you drive these cars back to back, but you will notice the weight difference only, again, if you drive it back to back. Let's turn around here. The 1M 3350, I mean, that's pretty light compared to modern sports cars for sure. But you will feel that this car is faster. The turbocharged motor makes it feel, I'd say, considerably faster than the M Coupe, even though they're only about 0.3 of a second apart in 0 to 60 times. Let's do some acceleration. These are public roads, so we're not going to go crazy, but this car is very insulated. So if you don't have an aftermarket exhaust will be really quiet in here. So driving the car in stock form, or even, you know, with the exhaust I have on it now, I'll take it to a car meet and people will tell me how great my car sounds. I don't hear it unless I roll the windows down. This car is very isolated, and that's why I think in the modern cars like the M2, they're pumping in the fake sound, because the sound is really there, but it's on the outside. You just can't hear it in the inside. Now the M Coupe is the opposite. It's 10 years older. It doesn't have as much insulation. It's lighter weight, and you hear every little sound, which makes it a very visceral, maybe more visceral car to drive. Now I think you'll like this car better if you're going to use it as a daily driver. If you needed one car to drive every day, probably pick up your little kids and take it on the track on the weekends, I think this is probably the car, hands down. It's modern enough that you have, you get the hydraulic steering, so it feels like a older, visceral car. You get the stick shift, but you don't have to worry about rolling back in hills if you're not great with a stick shift. You do have to rev match yourself. So again, get a modern car if you want to do your own, if you want the computer to do the rev matching for you. But this can easily be your one car that does everything. We know people that throw, I don't drive it when there's salt out or in the winter, but I know a lot of people do, and you can certainly get winter tires for it. The air conditioning is nice and strong. The radio sounds like a modern stereo system. You have a pretty up-to-date navigation system. Downsides to this car? Well, if you get you know, the other colors like white and black, they could look like a 135 to the untrained eye. The interior here is just, you know, a little spiced up 1 Series interior. While we wait for this person to turn around, a couple more downsides about the BMW 1M as compared to the Z3M Coupe is you kind of sit on the car instead of in the car. The Z3M, you're kind of sitting down. After getting out of this car and going to the Z3M Coupe, I literally fell into the seat because the seating position is higher here on the 1 Series M. The N54 engine, it's basically a tuned N54 engine, and it's turbocharged, unlike the naturally aspirated engines like the Z3M Coupe. You may prefer turbocharging. If you're going to modify the car, this is certainly the one to get, because you can make big power here with the N54 engine. There's a lot of tunes for it. I think there's a Cobb tune, I could be wrong, that can give you like 450 foot-pounds of torque, which makes a huge difference in this car. I actually had that tune and I ran it, and I took it off because I thought the car was too fast. I went through a set of rear tires with it. But it's just an amazing car to drive. Like I've said in my other videos, you can see my comparison against the M2, even against the M2 competition. This is the better, more exciting car. And the great news is, unlike those two cars, they're depreciating every year $5,000, where this probably is going up $3,000 to $5,000 a year. So you can keep this car. And that's a great way to get into an exotic, actually, for both of these cars. Say you want to buy a car that depreciates, like a McLaren or you know, maybe a paddle shift Ferrari and Lamborghini Huracan. Those cars are going to go down $10,000 a year, $15,000 a year, $20,000 a year in depreciation, certainly initially. You know, if this car goes up $5,000 a year, for example, best case scenario, at some point this could be an $80,000 or $100,000 car, and now you can get into that F430 or McLaren 570S, because they're going to keep depreciating. At some point they'll get closer together, and you know, you paid $65 for this car, one day it could be worth $100, and now you can get your dream exotic car for $100 because that was a $200,000 car that depreciated to $100. So I do that all the time. I try to buy cars that go up in value so I can keep my net worth, and that allows me to get more expensive cars. I have 7 cars at the time of this filming, and you know, I started with 1, and how I did it was buy cars that appreciated in value and traded those up for nicer cars that also went up in value. But I think you can't go wrong with either car. But I think what we have to do is, before we decide which is right for you, they're both right for me. Let's hop into the Z3M Coupe and see what the differences are and what we like and don't like about that car. Guys, so now we're in the Z3M Coupe. Now this is one with the rare S54 engine from the E46 M3. Now we can already tell that this car is a stiffer, more bouncier car. They made the Z3M Coupe here in the United States, model years 1999 to 2002. 99s and 2000s had the E46 M3 engine, the S52 with 240 horsepower. In 01 and 02, all the cars had the S54 engine, and instead of 333 horsepower, it was 315. And the difference, according to BMW, is exhaust routing. Now, this is a much shorter car. The BMW 1M is 172 inches long, which is actually about 3 to 4 inches shorter than an E46 M3 or a modern-day BMW M2. This car is only 158 inches long, and you can feel it. It's a much more livelier car. It actually rides stiffer, and you almost feel like you're driving a car from the 70s, like a 2002 race car. It is that visceral. Now, these cars weigh about 200 pounds less, like I said, than the BMW. Let's make a right here. Than the 1 Series M. So it's roughly 3,100 pounds instead of. Doing some acceleration here. So it's roughly 3,100 pounds instead of 3,300 pounds. So it is 200 pounds lighter, and you feel it. It feels like the lighter, more nimbler car. Now, which car is faster? The BMW 1M. Which car handles better? The BMW 1M. It's more of a modern car. But if you just want to have a Sunday morning drive, last tank of gas in the world, this is your car. It's such a thrill to drive this car. It's so exciting. You can see it's more snug in here. Since it's a smaller car, you can see how close I am to the camera compared to on the BMW 1M. It is really great going through the gears. Now, this is a 5-speed manual instead of a 6-speed manual. To me, why I chose this car is I used to have an E46 M3, and that car weighs 300 pounds more than this, and they're almost the same horsepower. So to me, after loving and having the E46 M3, I thought this was the best thing to get. To me, this is the lightweight M3 that we never got. It's similar, better power to weight ratio because it's 300 pounds less. And you can really feel it. This feels way faster than an E46 M3. Now again, going on these bumpy roads, you really see the difference. It's a short wheelbase car. It's a 2-seater, unlike the 1M where you could fit people in the back seat. So here, you really feel the bumps because your butt is practically on the rear wheels. So you do feel, of course, New Jersey's roads here are terrible condition. So it's really hard to find smooth roads to do this test. Now again, this doesn't have navigation, it doesn't have a backup camera, so this is even old school compared to the 1M. Now, if you want to find one of these cars for sale, your best bet is to go to the M Coupe Buyer's Guide. A gentleman named John Martin, who owns an M Coupe, set up this great buyer's guide, so you know what you're looking at, and he can rate all the cars, and he's familiar with this car. I talked to John before I bought this car 4 years ago. Again, I've owned both of these cars for 4 years. You know, when you get somebody else's car to make a video, or even if these were new cars, you get press cars, you only have them for a couple hours. And you're borrowing somebody else's car with them with you, you probably have it for an hour. So I'm probably the only YouTuber that owns both of these cars, but I've owned them both for 4 years, so I can really give you the ins and outs of both cars. Now, this car could have the same problems as any E46 M3 with the subframe, vanos, rod bearings, that kind of stuff. This car, I did 3 PPIs when I bought this car, and it passed with flying colors. Now, I look at this car as a lightweight M3, because we never got the M3 CSL here, and also as a better driving version of the E30 M3. So the E30 M3 is a great car with a race motor, but it's not very fast compared to a modern car. Now, this is not the car's fault. These are some roads that need to be paved here. And this car is much faster. So this 0 to 60 in about 4.8 seconds. We're going around all the bumps here. Which is pretty quick in 01. Now, if you want an S52 car, if you just like the look, but can't afford the S54 cars because they go up in value so much, that's about 5.3 seconds to 60. Good news, just like the 1M, as I mentioned before, they only come in 6 shifts. The difference is this is a 5-speed instead of a 6-speed. And well, you'll notice that difference is on the highway. Again, another thing that makes the BMW 1M the better daily driver if you're going to drive a lot, because if you're going to do a lot of highway driving, you know, 6th gear, you'll be at a 2,000 or 3,000 RPM, where here, if I'm in 5th gear on the highway, I could be at 4,000 RPM, which is actually eating your gas mileage. They both have small gas tanks. I think they're both about 13 gallons. This, I think, is even smaller than that. You don't have much torque. The BMW 1M will have a lot more torque, and that'll make it feel faster. I mean, it is faster. It's 0.2 of a second or 0.3 of a second quicker, but with that turbo, it'll kind of shoot you out of corners. That's going to handle better because it's a little more modern car, but I would say that oversteers more. Now, I know people who have oversteered these cars and crashed them, but it'll give you signs of understeer, where I think the M3 likes to go to power oversteer pretty often. All right, let's give it some revs. Now, this car sounds way better. That was only 4,000 RPM. Imagine if we went to 8,000. You feel the bumps here. You feel the bumps more in my car because I have 19-inch wheels instead of 17. If you went with the 17, you'd have a lot more sidewall and it wouldn't be this bumpy. This car sounds way better. 1M doesn't sound anything like this normally aspirated S54. I prefer normally aspirated motors, and this is the better visceral driving experience. Now, values. These cars were $45,000 brand new, and BMW didn't do options back then like they do now. So they pretty much, people who bought these cars new paid $45,000. A car like this with 53,000 miles, I think, is in the sweet spot. You can buy one of these cars for $45,000. And again, I would look at the M Coupe buyer's guide. That's your best bet because John is familiar with a lot of these cars. You know, a real high mileage car, and I'm talking S54 values only. And remember, there's only 678 of these cars. So in 2001, 2002, this is an 01, and they made about, 300 something each of those 2 years. So 100,000 mile S54 is probably high 30s, still pushing close to 40 grand. 53,000 mile like this, I should be able to get 45 for this. And low mileage cars, or very rare colors, fetch usually around 60. And a specialty dealer, somebody like EAG, had a Laguna Seca blue one, which they only made like 40 of those, and their S54s for 80,000. So that'll give you the gamut. I think this is the sweet spot. Get one with 50,000 miles so you can still drive it. You buy a low mileage one for 60. Every mile you put on devalues the car. And let's have some fun. I don't think there's a difference in value here between 50 and 60,000. About a bunch of years ago, these cars were 45 new. They depreciated down to about 25. And now, this particular car, let's call it 45, it's probably going to go up $3,000 to $5,000 a year, probably $5,000 a year, since it's even rarer than the BMW 1M. Again, there's 740 1Ms here in the United States, and there's 678 S54 Z3M Coupes. There's a big community and following for these cars, so you should have no problem. You know, if you need suggestions or need to get parts, everybody helps each other. We have a pretty active community here in New Jersey, where we go from drives all over New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. So it's a great group. So in conclusion, let's talk about these cars. Which one is best for you? Well, they're both great M cars, and they both appreciate in value. I think that's a way better place to put your money than, say, an M2 or an M2 competition or an M3, because those cars are going to depreciate. Here you have better power to weight ratio than an E46 M3, which is also going up. Remember, there's 25,000 E46 M3s. There's only 678 of these cars. So what's going to be worth more in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years than this car? And, you come to a Cars and Coffee, you're going to be the only one with this car. Same thing with a 1M. I mean, they're pretty rare cars. Rarely do I see another one. But, there's going to be a million M3s there, and there's going to be a million M2s there, because they're selling thousands of those. So I wouldn't have my M2 if I didn't have a Z3M or a 1M first. So I think if there's, if you want to commute to work, you want to pick up your kids, you want to do track days, and you need one car to do everything, I think the choice is obvious. It's the BMW 1M, and I bought that car first for those very reasons. I wanted to take my family with me, and I wanted to be able to do everything with that car, so that was the best choice. But I can tell you that when I bought the 1M, I was still trying to find videos, and there were no videos on YouTube for S54 Z3M Coupes. Now there's some, and probably half of them are mine. And you know, I would still, if I saw a Z3M Coupe, I would still be like gaga over it, and I'm still trying to find all the videos I can, read every article on it. So even though I had the 1M, I wasn't satisfied enough that I still needed this car. So I think there's 1 gallon of gas in the universe. This is the car you buy. This is probably, I think, the best driving M car that there is. And I think you can make a real good case for a 1M, especially if you're going to drive it all the time. But if this is going to be a sense of occasion car, you know, nights and weekends, cars and coffee, I would pick this car. If you're really going to drive it, like I take my 1M to hockey, or we go on drives here to a lot of the mountain roads. If I was doing drives with my friends, I would take the 1M, because the 1M is more likely to keep up with them. You know, it has a finer tuned chassis. I have a navigation. I have, you know, a better stereo. So if you're going to do a lot of drives with faster cars, I think you want the 1M all the way. The 1M is modern enough and fast enough to keep up with most cars, where I would say the Z3M is probably a shade slow on the speed, is probably a generation slow. The S52 is probably 2 generations slow. But you know, I think they're both great cars for you to buy. And again, drive the car all the time, get the BMW 1M, or if you want the modern conveniences and easy clutch that doesn't roll down on hills. You're only going to use this on Sunday mornings just to rip it, or you know, show off at your local cars and coffee, then I think this is your car. 1 gallon of gas, this is the most visceral car. But the 1M is going to be able to do everything. So choose what's right for you. You can't go wrong. In a perfect world, I'm going to tell you to buy both, but you're probably only going to look at one of these cars. Who needs all these BMWs? But you can't go wrong with either choice. Both of them are going to go up in value. I think both of these are really a must-buy. Don't buy a modern car that's going to depreciate in value. Buy one of this that'll hold its value for years to come. Thanks again for watching, guys. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and check out my new real estate channel, Glenn Real Estate Expert. That is how I afford these cars. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care. You know what? We'll see you next time. I'm going to keep driving. Are you kidding me? I got a Z3M Coupe here. I'm driving. Thanks again for watching, guys. Take care.